Over these past few weeks, we've gone through a quasi-relational series about family. We talked about mothers on Mother's Day. We had our alumni come, and those who are at Temple who've gone before us, our elders, those who have set the example and have provided so much to us. We heard from the children the future, about faith and about life and about what lies ahead of them. And so today I thought I would continue our series to speak about home just a little bit, about welcome home. And as I was preparing for my sermon, it reminded me back, my memory went back to the time when I was in college, back at the academy. It was the first time I had really been away from home. And I really remember how bad my first semester was. It was horrible. Man, the upperclassmen yelling at me, getting up early in the morning, staying awake late at night, the pressure, basketball, hard practices, the tough military discipline, and plebe English, freshman English, I was failing. And if you failed English, you had to go to summer school. And the last thing I wanted to do in life was go to a summer school in a place like that. And I was sweating bullets, and it was hard. And it was almost, the loneliness was overwhelming. I had never been away from home. Mom and Dad lived in Florida. Academy was up at West Point, New York. I was lonely. I was so lonely. And not only was my family in Florida, Carol was too, and that just added to the loneliness. And I remember how difficult it was, and they were the worst, they were undoubtedly the worst days of my entire life. But I also remembered back to the end of that first semester, Christmas break. And I remember flying on a plane from New York to Tampa, Florida. I had my little uniform on. They made us wear it. Had a little uniform on and going home, and the plane landed. And I remember getting up in the aisle as fast as I could. I wanted to be the first one off that plane. And I was so overcome with emotion, I literally began to cry as I stood in the aisle waiting to get off. And as I got off the plane and walked up the ramp, there was Mom and Dad waiting for me, waiting for the son. And they said, "Welcome home, son. Welcome home." Jesus was preparing his disciples for what would be the worst days of their lives. See, after he tells them that the authorities are going to kill him, that Judas is going to betray him, that Peter was going to deny him, they were overcome. It was more than the disciples could bear. They thought Jesus was their promised Messiah, that he was the deliverer. He was going to set them free from Rome. He was going to bring them a life they had never known before. And they had left everything to follow Jesus, and now Jesus was going to leave them. It was more than they could process, more than they could bear. Just too much, Jesus. How are we going to make it without you? Sensing their despair, Jesus comforts them with words about trust. And he begins by telling them to trust me today, to trust me today. And we have this most beautiful passage out of the book of John, where Jesus begins to say to them, "Do not let your hearts be troubled." Trouble means to agitate, to cause inward commotion, to take away one's calmness of mind. And to his disciples said, "Do not let your hearts be troubled." You see, Jesus knew something, understood something. See, a troubled heart is a choice. It is a choice. An agitated heart is a choice. An inward commotion in a heart is a choice. And just as much as a troubled heart is a choice, so is an untroubled heart. And I've known people who choose both ways. And at different points in my life, depending on what's going on, I have chosen both the untroubled and troubled ways. And I know people in their lives, depending on who ride out the storms with attitudes of calmness and tranquility and peace. And I've seen other people buckle under a gentle breeze. I've known people whose hearts never seem to be troubled, and I've been around people whose hearts seem to be troubled all the time, and their hearts are so troubled they trouble mine. And so to his disciples, that Jesus would soon be leaving, and to us who are striving to follow Jesus in our living, Jesus says, do not choose to let your hearts be troubled. Rather, choose untroubled hearts. Then he tells us how. He says, trust in God. Trust in God. Trust also in me. It's almost as Jesus saying to his disciples, hey, you're Jews. Your whole life has been about learning what it is to trust God. As little babies, your mothers taught you what it meant to trust God. As little boys going through school, they read you stories from the Bible about what it means to trust God. And as young men, you went to worship in the synagogue, hearing stories and songs and recitations of what it means to trust God. You know all about what it means to trust God. And with that same level of commitment and certainty and passion, Jesus says to trust me also, because I, Jesus, am worthy of your trust. Are you a person worthy of trust? Are you trustworthy? When you say you're going to do something, do you follow through and do you do it? Do you carry it out? Or do you make a promise that you don't keep? Are you trustworthy? Jesus says, disciples, I am worthy of your trust. A while back, I was getting ready to go to work, leave the house and go to work. And Carol and I had prayer and got together, was getting ready to go out the door, and she said, hey, Scott, before you leave, can you take some pork chops out of the freezer so we can have them for dinner? And I'm in a hurry, said, yeah, no problem, I can do it. And then she asked me, well, can I trust you to do it? And I think, trust me? What do you mean, can you trust me to do it? She said, well, no. She said, can I count on you to do that? I said, well, wait, what? Can you count on me to do that? Why do you think you could not count on me to do it? Well, because many times in the past, when I'm in a hurry to go to work, Carol has asked me to take stuff out of the freezer, and I have failed to do so. It could be pork chops, hamburgers, hot dogs, Parmesan cheese, mustard, mayonnaise, ketchup, rat poison. Doesn't matter what it was. She would ask me to take it out of the freezer, and I'd get so distracted in my thoughts of what's going on in the day that I'd run out of the house and forget to do it. I said, I've got this, girl. You can count on me. So I got things together, grabbed my backpack, laptop, head off to work. Having a great day, feeling pretty good about myself, pretty proud, until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I remembered, oh no, I forgot to take the pork chops out of the freezer. So I called Carol. I said, Carol, do you love me? She says, yes, God, I love you. I said, no, Carol, do you really, truly, deeply, do you love me? She said, yes, God, I love you. Oh, I said, good, because I hate to tell you that I forgot to take the pork chops out of the freezer. And she said, I know. She says, as soon as I know, when I took lunch, I went and looked in the freezer, and there they were, and I'm sorry, but we're not having pork chops for dinner tonight. I said she could trust me, but I let her down. I failed her. But fortunately, Jesus is not imperfect Scott. Jesus is the perfect Son of the living God. And as the Son of God, Jesus says, just as you trust in God, my Father, you can trust in me, his Son. So, man, I came to save you. I came to die for you. I came to give all that I am for you, and you can trust me that I absolutely will. And to comfort us in the hardest times of life, Jesus says, trust me in our today, but he also says to trust him in the promise of heaven tomorrow. Let's see. And he says, in my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. Jesus says, trust me when I tell you that in heaven, God, there's a house. As Jesus says, it's not my house, it's my Father's house. Jesus says, trust that the God who created time also created eternity. Trust that the God who created the physical things that we can see created spiritual things that we can't see. Jesus said, trust that the God who created earth also created a heaven. You see, we can get totally so consumed with the things in our everyday that we lose sight, are unable to see beyond the horizon of what lies ahead of us. Jesus says, trust me by taking your focus off this world. Trust me, and if you look just a little bit further, look out into eternity, you'll see and realize that my Father has a house, and it's there. Isn't it interesting Jesus used the word house? He didn't say, trust that my Father has a heaven for you, or trust that my Father has an eternity for you. He said, trust that my Father has a house for you. You see, a house, a home, is where we are protected. A home keeps us safe from the heat and from the cold. A home protects us from those who would hurt us and harm us. A home is a place we should be able to go to live without suffering. And God's house is the perfect place. And John, his disciple, describes God's house like this. John writes, and I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, now the dwelling place of God is with men, and he will live with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them and be their God. Hear these words now. Hear these. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Wouldn't you like to live somewhere where you have no more tears? There will be no more death. A home, a place where no one dies, or sadness, or mourning, or grief, or crying, or pain. For the old odor of things has passed away. Wouldn't you like to live in a place like that, in a house like that, in a home like that? And Jesus said such a place exists. And even beyond that, he says, and I'm going there to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I'll come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. You know, Jesus says, trust me that there's this place exists, but also trust me that I'm going there to get it ready for you. You see, Jesus is leaving his disciples not because he wants to leave his disciples. He's getting ready to leave his disciples because he can't stay with them and prepare a place for heaven, a better place in heaven for them. He had to leave them so he could get ready for them. But the disciples weren't feeling it. Jesus is going to die. He's going to be out of here. And they can't wrap their minds around this. But Jesus is not deserting them. He's going to prepare heaven just for them, just for us. And Jesus says, trust me. Trust me. And I'm going there. But I'm coming back. I'm coming back. And take you to be with me that you also may be where I am. To comfort us, Jesus says, trust me in your today. He says, trust me that there is a heaven for you tomorrow. But finally, most importantly, Jesus says, trust me that I am the way. He says, the way to the place where I'm going. The disciples knew the way. The disciples spent 3 years watching, listening to the way teach. The disciples had seen the way heal the hurting. The disciples had watched the way raise the dead. They were there when the way fed thousands and thousands of people with loaves and fishes. But Thomas, in Thomas-like fashion, said to him, Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way? And Jesus answered, he says, I am the way. I am the way. And I'm the truth. And I'm the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. A while back, we had our conversational English groups with Chinese students. And we were having our discussion around a table, and one of the young men asked me, he said, what does Christianity get you? I said, what? He said, what does Christianity get you? I said, what do you mean, what does Christianity get you? He said, well, you think about it like this. He said, if you're a Hindu, you get reincarnated. If you're a Muslim, you get 72 virgins. If you're a Christian, what do you get? And I thought for a second, I said to him, what Christianity gets you is the opportunity to one day hear Jesus say those incredible words. Welcome home, my child. Welcome home. And Jesus so desperately wants to say those words to you. And he's waiting there to say those words to us. See, Jesus came to earth to find you. Jesus gave his life to forgive you. And Jesus went back to heaven to prepare a place for you. And right now, Jesus is waiting there, waiting to say, welcome home, just to you. All we have to do is trust Jesus. And that's why this morning we've created one Sunday a month a space in our worship service to let God do in our hearts what God desires to do. Create a space that wherever you are on your spiritual journey, wherever you are at this moment in time, that maybe in your faith journey today you begin to desire to follow Jesus, to become a disciple. You do that by confessing the sins of your past, asking Jesus forgiveness in your present, to live for Jesus with your life and your future, just confessing the life you've lived. Life without Jesus. Receiving his forgiveness, he offers to us today, right now in this moment, forgiveness of our sins. To live for him with your life and your future. To begin to follow Jesus. Or maybe for you as a rededication. Maybe you've been following Jesus, but it's at a distance. You have spiritual things happen in your past, but you've been far away from him. And you want to begin to follow him more closely, more authentically. For you today, it'd be just come take my hand and say, Scott, pray for me. Pray for me. This moment right here, pray for me. I want to follow Jesus more. I want to be his child. I want to be his disciple. Whatever your heart is, just bow your head, close your eyes as Brian plays. I'm just going to stand here, not twist arms, not beat you up, but just wait.